You know how people say, you weren't supposed to hear that? Yeah, that was me. Tuesday afternoon at 2:14 p.m. I came home early because my 3 p.m. meeting got cancelled, and I figured, why not surprise my wife with coffee and that overpriced almond croissant she's addicted to? Cute idea, right? As I stepped into the house, I heard voices coming from the kitchen. Jasmine and her best friend Marissa. I was about to call out, "Hey ladies!" when something in Jasmine's tone made me stop cold. I don't know, Riss. Grant's fine. He's good. He's stable. Like, really stable. But sometimes I think maybe I settled too early. Like, what if I just chose the safe option and locked it in? There was a pause. Then Jasmine added, like it was the most normal thing in the world. He's just convenient. He pays the bills, doesn't cheat, doesn't yell, doesn't do anything. It's like being married to a weighted blanket. I stood in the hallway holding a paper bag with 2 lattes and a pastry like the world's dumbest delivery guy. I wasn't angry yet, not even shocked, just hollow, convenient, stable, weighted, freaking blanket. And that's when I walked in. Marissa froze mid-sip. Jasmine went sheet white. Marissa bolted with a, "Oh wow, I just remembered I left laundry in the machine, gotta go," or something equally pathetic, and I was left alone with my wife. I put the bag on the counter, took a deep breath, looked her dead in the eye. "So, I'm convenient now? Good to know." "You weren't supposed to hear that," she said. "Yeah, that much is clear. It's not what it sounded like." "Then please enlighten me. What did it sound like when you said being married to me feels like cuddling with a tax write-off?" She crossed her arms, defensive. "You're twisting my words." "No, Jasmine, you meant exactly what you said. I just wasn't supposed to hear it." There was a pause. Then she said it, calmly, like she was placing a lunch order. "I just need some time to think and figure out if you're still worth keeping." Like I was some app she wasn't sure about renewing. I stared at her for a moment. Let that land. And then I smiled. Not the nice kind. "Take all the time you want. But just so we're clear, while you're busy figuring out if I'm worth keeping, I'll be thinking real hard about whether you are." She blinked. That wasn't the script she expected. She wanted tears, begging, guilt, a heartfelt speech about how I'd be lost without her. What she got instead was a man who heard the final bell and didn't flinch. I turned around and walked out of the kitchen. I didn't go back to work. I went to the garage and sat down in the quiet. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from clarity. That was the moment I realized, I'm not her partner. I'm her placeholder. She wasn't struggling. She was shopping. And now she'd put me on layaway. Not gonna happen. By the time I stepped back in from the garage, the house felt hollow, quiet, like even it had overheard what she said. No apology, no explanation. So I opened my laptop and got to work. Banking. First stop. Called the bank, explained I needed to remove an authorized user due to a separation. Jasmine's access to the joint cards. Gone. Streaming services. New passwords. iCloud. Locked down. If she wanted a test run of life without me, I was going to give her the premium package. Here's the thing about marriage nobody warns you about. It doesn't end with a bang. Not usually. Sometimes it just fades. Slowly. Like a dimmer switch you didn't notice someone was turning. Until suddenly, you're sitting in the dark. And then they ask if you'd mind stepping out while they decide if they still like the furniture. Jasmine didn't leave the house. She stayed. Apparently, needing time to think didn't require actual distance, just emotional insulation. We moved around the same house like polite strangers in an Airbnb rental. Civil, quiet, occasionally bumping into each other in the hallway with fake smiles and dead eyes. It was Wednesday night when the first crack appeared. I was in the living room watching a documentary about serial killers, as one does when their marriage is on fire, when I heard her voice float down from the top of the stairs. Grant, why can't I get into Netflix? I didn't pause the TV. Because I changed the password. Why? Trial separation includes trial conditions. You said you needed time to think. This is what thinking looks like. There was a long pause. Are you being serious right now? Dead serious. She came down the stairs with that slow, dramatic energy usually reserved for movie scenes where someone just discovered a murder. You're punishing me. I turned to face her, calm, tea in hand, slippers on. Number. I'm giving you a realistic picture of what life without me actually looks like. You said you needed a week to evaluate if I'm worth keeping. Well, you can't do that while still enjoying the benefits. This is ridiculous. You know what's ridiculous? Listening to your wife call you a weighted blanket and then watching her act confused when you stop carrying the emotional weight. She didn't like that. She scoffed, turned around, and went back upstairs, muttering something under her breath about immaturity. I didn't follow. She was waiting for me to apologize, to explain myself, to try and talk it through. What she got was the sound of me adjusting the volume and returning to my evening with a man who murdered 3 people in Oregon and still had a better marriage than mine. Thursday, I made a phone call. 3, actually. All to different family law attorneys in the area. I wasn't filing anything yet, but I figured if I was going to be evaluated, I should at least understand my options too. Turns out, there's a lot to consider when you're married to someone who views love as a performance-based contract. Bank accounts, mortgage, insurance, asset division. It's not just about feelings anymore. I didn't bring it up that day. No confrontation, no warning, just quiet planning, strategic movement. Jasmine was busy upstairs, probably journaling her feelings or texting Marissa about how cold I'd become. That night, I cooked dinner. For one, I made pasta. Nothing fancy. Just enough for me. I even lit a candle out of pure pettiness. Jasmine walked into the kitchen as I was plating. You didn't make any for me? Didn't know if I was still feeding someone who might not keep me? She rolled her eyes. Classic. You're being so dramatic. Right, because nothing says mature like putting your husband on a week-long probation. She didn't respond. She just sat down at the other end of the table, pulled out her phone, and started scrolling like I didn't exist. Which was fine, because for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to earn my seat at that table. By Thursday morning, the house felt like a conference center between events. Quiet, polished, full of fake professionalism and zero warmth. Jasmine and I had perfected the art of not speaking unless absolutely necessary. Eye contact was rare. Physical proximity was absent. At one point, I passed her in the hallway. She smiled like I was a coworker she didn't particularly like. "Morning," she said. "If you say so." She didn't respond, just kept walking. That afternoon, while I was on a work call, I noticed a notification flash across the shared iPad. She was still logged into the family calendar. Amateur mistake. Dinner with Blake, 7 p.m. No last name, just Blake. That was a new one. I waited until she came downstairs and casually asked, "Got plans tonight?" She blinked, paused. "Just meeting with a client, marketing stuff." "Why?" "No reason, just wondering if I should eat alone again." She gave me a look, part guilt, part calculation, and left it at that. 7:04 p.m., doorbell. I stayed in the kitchen rinsing a cutting board, heard the greeting, the laugh, then the voice, smooth, confident, just a little too loud. "Hey, you must be Grant." I turned to see a tall guy with an expensive watch and even more expensive teeth standing in the doorway. He extended a hand like we were old pals about to tee off at a country club. "Blake, I've heard so much about you." "Only the good stuff, I hope," I said, shaking his hand firmly. His confidence faltered for just a second. Jasmine hovered nearby, smiling too brightly. "Blake's one of my new clients. she said, overly casual. We're working on a brand refresh. Of course you are. Blake chuckled awkwardly. I gestured toward the dining room. Hope you're cool with pasta. I didn't realize we were entertaining tonight, but hey, what's a trial period without test audiences? The silence in that room was sharp enough to cut raw meat. Blake clearly hadn't signed up for dinner theater. So, real estate? I asked as we sat. Yeah, I'm in development. Commercial mostly. Nice. Jasmine's been evaluating some things lately too. Big decisions. High stakes. You know how it is. Blake glanced nervously at her. Jasmine looked like she wanted to sink into her wine glass. You always this blunt? He asked with a forced laugh. Only when someone invites another man to my dinner table while deciding if I'm worth keeping. He choked on his water. Wait, what? Jasmine shot me a death glare. Grant, can we talk for a second? Of course. Blake, make yourself at home. Might be your new gig after all. We walked into the living room. She whirled around before I even closed the door. What the hell are you doing? Making dinner for your client. Isn't that what you wanted? Don't play dumb. You're trying to humiliate me. Nope. Just giving your guest a glimpse into what relationship evaluation week looks like from my side. This wasn't a date. Then why didn't you tell me he was coming over? Because I knew you'd make a scene. And yet, here we are. No scene. Just honesty. Maybe that's the problem. She opened her mouth, closed it, and for once had no script to run. Do you want him here? I asked. No, I just thought that seeing you with someone else might spark something? Jealousy? Regret? She didn't answer. Congratulations, I said. It sparked clarity. Back in the kitchen, Blake was standing, clearly ready to bolt. Hey man, I actually just remembered I have to prep for a showing tomorrow morning. No problem, I said. Thanks for stopping by. He nodded, gave Jasmine a quick half hug, and left faster than Marissa did on Tuesday. When the door closed, Jasmine turned to me, jaw tight. Are you happy now? About what? Watching a grown man realize he was dragged into someone else's emotional stunt? Yeah, a little. You humiliated me. You humiliated yourself. I just set the table. She didn't say anything. She just stood there while I drained the pasta and plated it, for one. Friday morning arrived like a hungover apology, quiet, slow, and full of regret no one wanted to say out loud. Jasmine didn't come down for breakfast, which suited me fine. I made eggs, toast, coffee, ate alone, no noise, no drama, just peace, the kind that shows up when you're finally done pretending everything's fine. Around 10:30, I found her at the kitchen table, laptop open, legal pad in front of her. She was dressed like she had a meeting, but it was clear she wasn't going anywhere. We need to talk, she said without looking up. We've been talking all week. You just haven't liked what I had to say. I'll admit I didn't handle things well. The Blake thing was bad. You think? She finally looked up. I was scared, okay? I felt like we were drifting apart and I didn't know how to reach you. So you brought in a stand-in husband for an evening? Solid plan. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Because from where I'm sitting, you invited another man into our home, while on a week-long mental vacation from our marriage, hoping I'd grovel at the doorstep. I wasn't trying to manipulate you. Of course not. Just create urgency. You know what creates urgency? Divorce attorneys. She blinked. Hard. You talked to a lawyer? I sat down across from her. Calm. Measured. 3, actually. I like to compare rates. You're not serious. Dead serious. Don't worry. I haven't signed anything. Yet. I reached into my bag and placed a neatly organized folder on the table. Her name printed on the tab. She stared at it like it was radioactive. Inside, copies of bank transfers to a new account, screenshots of the dinner invite to Blake, notes from each of the 3 law firms I spoke with, a printed timeline of key conversations, including hers. What is this? Documentation. Lawyers love that word. Grant, This is insane. No, Jasmine. What's insane is telling your husband he's a weighted blanket and then being shocked when he stops keeping you warm. She stood up. You're punishing me. Number, I'm preparing. You wanted a week to figure out if I'm worth keeping. I figured I'd do the same. So what? This is revenge? This is a man treating himself with the respect his wife stopped giving him. I never said I didn't love you. You didn't have to. You said you weren't sure if I was worth keeping. That's not love. That's inventory management. She opened her mouth again, and just then, the doorbell rang. We both turned. You expecting someone? I asked. I might have told my mom we needed to talk. Of course she did, and based on the voices I heard outside, she didn't come alone. 3 women entered my house like they were storming a courtroom. First came Jasmine's mother, Angela, 5 feet 2 inches of sheer maternal judgment, wearing the expression of someone who'd already picked a side and brought the closing arguments. Then her sister Caroline, arms folded, face tight, eyes scanning for weakness. And finally, Madison, Jasmine's best friend from college, who once got so drunk at our wedding she mistook the DJ booth for a bathroom. The holy trinity of guilt. They didn't wait for me to invite them in. Angela marched straight to the living room like she owned the deed. We need to talk, she announced. Good morning to you too, I replied. Coffee? No takers. They sat. Jasmine trailed behind them, visibly nervous. She hadn't expected backup to arrive with quite so much force. We're here because someone needs to talk sense into you, Caroline started. She's been crying all week. I'm sorry to hear that, I said calmly. Ultimatums can be emotionally difficult for everyone involved. Angela snapped her fingers. Don't get smart with me, young man. Marriage requires compromise. You don't just threaten divorce every time things get tough. Interesting, I said. Out of curiosity, is telling your husband he's on a 1-week probation supposed to count as compromise now? Silence. Madison shifted in her seat. She didn't mean it like that, she said. You know how she gets when she's overwhelmed. So I was supposed to ignore her words? Just wait quietly while she weighed the pros and cons of staying married to me? Angela crossed her arms. You're supposed to fight for your marriage. Fight for what exactly? They blinked. I stood, walked to the drawer, retrieved the folder, set it on the coffee table like a detonator. Let me ask you something, I said. If your husband sent you a text saying he needed a week to decide if you were worth keeping, how would you respond? Angela's face tightened. That's different. How? Because men don't do that. Don't do what? Evaluate their spouses? Invite other people over during an evaluation period? Or treat their partners like employees under review? Now Caroline looked uncomfortable. Madison too. Wait, other people? Caroline asked. I nodded slowly. Thursday night, she invited Blake over. Tall guy, nice watch, real estate, said it was a business dinner. Forgot to mention it to me until he was already at the door. Angela turned sharply toward Jasmine. You invited a man over? During all this? Jasmine flushed. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I asked. Because she told me, and I quote, she hoped seeing her with someone else might remind me what I was missing. Madison's jaw dropped. Jazz, seriously? Jasmine looked around for backup. She found 3 stunned faces. It wasn't a date, she muttered. During a week where you're evaluating your marriage, you bring a man I've never met into our home. You don't tell me he's coming, you don't ask, and you sit across from me at the table like I'm the third wheel in my own kitchen. I turned back to her personal panel of defenders. Would any of you be okay with that? Caroline shook her head. That's incredibly inappropriate. Angela looked like she'd just bitten into a lemon. This isn't what she told us. Number, I imagine she left that part out. We came here to help her fix things. Then maybe the first step is recognizing what actually needs fixing. Jasmine opened her mouth to protest, but I raised a hand. Don't worry, you'll get your chance. I looked at each of them again. You came here to convince me to fight for this marriage, but none of you have asked what I'm fighting for." Angela spoke, softer now. "You're fighting for your wife, for your family. A wife who put me on a 1-week trial period, who invited another man over to test my reaction, who handed me a decision like a deadline on a lease." Silence. "I don't want to be begged for. I don't want to be tested. I want to be chosen." They had no answer for that. Even Jasmine looked like she wasn't sure what to say anymore. I let the moment breathe. Then walked to the briefcase. Pulled out another folder, this one thick, crisp, heavy with possibility. "Just so everyone's clear," I said, placing it next to the other, "these are divorce papers. Complete, unsigned, for now." 3 sets of eyes locked on it like it might catch fire. But I have already made my decision. The tribunal had left the house in stunned silence. Angela didn't say goodbye. Caroline muttered something about needing time to process. Madison gave Jasmine a hug so awkward it could have been mistaken for a hostage rescue. When the door closed behind them, Jasmine and I stood there in the hallway, the wreckage of her support system still settling in the air. She looked like a boxer after the 9th round, tired, bruised, still standing, but unsure how. "You didn't have to humiliate me," she said quietly. "I didn't. You did that all by yourself." She didn't argue. Instead, she went upstairs without another word. I didn't follow. That night, I made dinner again. For one, Jasmine stayed in the bedroom. I heard movement, pacing, drawers opening and closing. Maybe she was packing. Maybe she was unraveling. I didn't ask. At 7 o'clock sharp on Saturday, the final day of her evaluation period, she came into the living room. She looked, not composed, not calm, but determined. Like someone walking into a job interview they knew they weren't qualified for anymore. She sat across from me on the couch. "I've made my decision," she said, voice low. "Okay. I want to keep you. I want to keep us." I nodded, said nothing. I know I handled this horribly. The things I said, the way I acted, it was manipulative. I was scared and stupid and looking for a reaction. You got one. Not the one I expected. I tilted my head slightly. "What were you expecting, Jasmine? Me begging, crying, competing with Blake in some twisted Bachelor episode for your affection? I wanted to feel wanted, like you'd fight for me. By making me feel replaceable?" She flinched. "I know. It sounds awful. But I didn't know how else to get your attention. So you resorted to testing me. Ultimatums, humiliation. That was your big plan." She looked down at her hands, clenched tight in her lap. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. About how I treated our marriage like something conditional. Like love had to be earned. You were right. I've been treating you like a safe investment, not a partner." I stayed silent. Let the words hang there. Let her sit in it. "If you'll give me a second chance," she said, "I'll do better. I'll communicate instead of test. I'll trust instead of manipulate. I'll choose you the way you've always chosen me." Finally, I spoke. "I appreciate your honesty, and I believe you mean every word you just said." Her eyes lit up, a flicker of hope breaking through. Until I added, "But here's the part you still don't understand." I reached for the folder that had been sitting on the table since yesterday. Opened it. Divorce papers inside. "The moment you told me, to my face, that you needed a week to decide if I was worth keeping, our marriage changed." Her breath caught. "Not because of your decision," I continued, "but because of what it revealed about how you see me." "Please don't sign those," she whispered. "For 6 years, I thought I was married to someone who knew my worth, who saw me, all of me, and chose me fully. What this week showed me is that I was married to someone who needs periodic reminders. That's not true anymore. You changed your mind because the consequences became real, but what happens the next time you feel insecure? Do I get another evaluation period? Another loyalty test? Another dinner guest?" Tears were sliding down her face now, but I kept my voice steady. I'm not interested in being someone's learning experience or their redemption arc. I'm interested in being with someone who doesn't need a crisis to recognize my value. I picked up the pen, signed the papers. Her sob broke into a whisper. We can fix this. Number, we can't. Because the moment you asked if I was worth keeping, you made it clear that you never saw me as someone who was already enough. She covered her mouth, couldn't look at me. What about everything we built? It was built on the idea that we both saw each other as a sure thing. You broke that foundation, not me. I can change. Maybe, but not with me. I stood, placed the signed papers on the table in front of her. I'm not angry. I'm not spiteful. I'm just done being married to someone who treats love like a performance evaluation. Sunday morning arrived with the weight of finality. No arguments, no desperate apologies, just the quiet acknowledgement that something had ended, and no one was pretending otherwise anymore. I made coffee. Didn't ask if she wanted any. At 9:17 a.m., Jasmine came downstairs with 2 suitcases and a gym bag. She didn't look at me. Just walked past, silent, her heels tapping across the hardwood like a retreating army. She paused at the door, keys in hand. Do you want me to leave the spare? I looked up from my cup. Number, keep it. You might need to swing by for whatever's left. Right. She didn't say goodbye. Just opened the door and stepped into the sunlight like it burned. I watched from the window as she loaded her bags into the back of her car. She didn't cry, at least not until the engine started. Her shoulders gave her away. She sat there for a full minute before finally driving off. And just like that, the house was mine again. There was no satisfaction, no victory lap, no petty celebration. Just space, just stillness, just the echo of a man who finally stopped chasing clarity from someone who fed him chaos. I cleaned the kitchen, watered the plants, opened the windows. Everything felt different, though nothing had moved. Later that day, her mother texted. She told me she's staying at Madison's, said she needs time. I didn't reply. What was there to say? She had all the time in the world. I was no longer on her clock. Funny thing about being put on a trial period, once you realize someone needed time to decide if you're worth keeping, it kind of answers the question for you. I wasn't mad, I wasn't bitter, but I was done. She thought walking away would be her power move. She didn't realize she was never the one who had the final say. I was, and I made it. 3 months have passed since the divorce. The house is quieter, cleaner somehow. Like the energy shifted once the constant tension walked out with 2 suitcases and a bruised ego. Jasmine hasn't tried to come back. She sent one long email. Apologies, reflections, promises of therapy and growth. I didn't reply. There's nothing cruel about silence when the conversation ended on your terms. People keep asking if I'm dating. I'm not. Right now, I'm enjoying being in a space where I'm not on trial every day. Somewhere along the way, we normalized the idea that men should be grateful just to be tolerated. That if you're calm, consistent, and devoted, you're boring. That love is something to be tested, not trusted. She learned the hard way that love isn't a game. And I learned this. When someone tells you they need time to decide if you're worth keeping, that's your answer. Walk away and don't look back.